So yesterday it was announced that Jon Jones received a 15-month suspension for his positive test stemming back from his fight with Daniel Cormier July 28, 2017 for Turinabol. Turinabol is known in the bodybuilding world as a substance that is hard to get tested positive for due to the fact of the low shelf life that it is in your system, and it's normally like a 3-month cycle on cycle off type of substance. But it does have a very low shelf life. I do believe it's like 24, 48 hours. So you would have to take a lot of it over time to actually get a benefit. Well, all this goes back to is Jon Jones, when he took all of his supplements to USADA and brought them to him, he never was able to prove that he took a contaminated substance. It's more or less something that was implied by California State Athletic Commission and others because of the amount that he tested positive for. They believe there's no actual real benefit to it. And they think that it should have shown up because he tested clean, tested positive, and then tested clean again in a 3-day span. Well, all that really matters is what USADA decided to do with that 15-month suspension. Well, Jon Jones has tested positive for supplements before. He tested positive for a estrogen blocker in 2015 or 16, I do believe, can't remember. And it was actually the same one that Brock Lesnar tested positive for. Now, Brock Lesnar ended up testing positive for 2 of them, and Jon Jones was just one. But anyway, so it also took us a long time to get to this conclusion. I don't really understand what the delay was in the whole process, but it does seem like it's just timely for them to announce it because his 15-month suspension is retroactive. They still don't have a main event for the UFC 230 card, which is November 3rd, and Jon Jones will be off of his suspension October 28th because his suspension is retroactive to his positive test date. But Dana White did come out and say that he doesn't think that Jon Jones is fighting until sometime in 2019, which could be some misdirection. We'll see what happens there. So my thoughts are USADA has shown that they are not actually in the interest of making sure everybody is clean and keeping the sport clean. And the reason why I say that, sorry guys, got to do a little bit move around here. The reason why I say that is because if you think about it, Jon tested positive. It took them 13, 14 months for them to finally come to a decision as what happened to him, what they're going to decide to do. That's a problem. Another problem is that you look at, this is his second drug test. Under the USADA protocol, second drug test failure is a minimum of 2 years. Now, it came out from USADA that they said when Jon Jones spoke to our arbitrator last Saturday that the arbitrator knocked 3 months off of his suspension, making it 15 instead of 18. Well, if it was 18 in the first place, that's still 6 months less than what USADA said what would happen on a second drug test failure. So that means that Jon still wasn't going to face the 2 years based off the guidelines that USADA has set. These aren't just things that are made up. These are in their actual guidelines that they said. It'd be 2 to 4 years, depending on how USADA feels about the whole situation. And USADA has said if they feel like you're honest with them, they're typically willing to help you out some more. So maybe Jon didn't know how that supplement got in his body. However, they have said it multiple times, and they told it to Jon the last time he tested positive. When you take a supplement, or you take anything, you're responsible for what goes in your body, what comes out your body. If they've said that, that's something that they got to stick with, and they haven't seemed to do that in the past. Going to a fighter's reactions, the one that's most important that he's always seemed to be tied to this man is Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier said on UFC Tonight, this was either before or after Ariel Helwani reported this, that that Daniel said USADA is no longer allowed to show up at his house at 6 a.m., inconvenience his family life, or things like that, because he has been under the USADA-wide protocol for over 17 years when he was doing world and Olympic wrestling, and he's never tested positive for any substance. And he believes that it's not hard to not test positive for a banned substance. So he believes that Jon's a cheater and Jon's being rewarded for it. Now, of course, I'm paraphrasing a lot of this here in regards to his statement, but it is true. Other fighters have came out and expressed their opinion as well, that they're upset with this suspension. This was the time that USADA needed to put their foot down and say, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are to this company, this is what we're going to do if you continuously test positive for supplements. A few months ago, Fabricio Verdun, he tested positive for a substance, and we just got announced before Jon Jones earlier this week or last week that he's receiving a 2-year suspension for the substance that he tested positive for. How do you expect Fabricio to feel now knowing that Jon Jones is not getting it? Now, Fabricio has been a thorn in the UFC side on and off. That shouldn't matter. What should matter is, let's be fair to everybody. Let's not be fair to just one person. And it seems like that's what the UFC has tended to do. There's other fighters, their first fight in the UFC, they end up testing positive. Boom, right away. They get hit with a 2-year suspension. There is one fighter, I do believe, that got hit with a 4-year. And so his career is pretty much over with and done. And that was the first time that he tested positive. And it was because of the level of the stuff that he tested positive for. Now, mind you, everything needs to go back to what USADA's protocols is for suspensions, for offenders, and things like that. Now, mind you, that other fighter that did get that 4 years, his name escapes me at this moment because he's not a high-profile guy, more or less bottom of the prelim guy. They said they believe that he was lied to a lot, and when USADA feels like they're lied to, ends up not going in the way of the fighter. So, anyway, Chael Sonnen actually did announce a few weeks ago, I do believe, that Jon Jones was reported back to training at Jackson Wink. Now, why is this important? This is important because that meant that Jon Jones knew that he wasn't going to get a 2-year suspension. He knew that he would be fighting sometime soon. And the reason why is this is what Chael is saying. Jon is not known as a person who was always in the gym, working out, trying to improve techniques, things like that. He's just gifted. And so he goes there when he knows that he has a fight coming up. So why would he be training if he knew he didn't have a fight coming up? It was also reported last week, I believe, or earlier this week, that they are targeting Alexander Gustafsson versus Jon Jones for the light heavyweight title. Of course, Daniel Cormier doesn't know anything about this. He is the current champ. But these are just true things that you're trying to think about and trying to see what's going on. So, but that's pretty much on the subject. Feel free to comment below and let me know how you guys feel about it, and we'll get it there. Thanks.